Hi guys, so today I wanted to do an update video on Raptor and how the monitor lizard project has been going. As you guys may be aware, we found out that Raptor is most likely a female. So we got her young enough that telling the gender was rather difficult. So when I was first trying to decide on getting a monitor at what age I wanted, I was torn between two opposing goals. I wanted on one side to get Raptor as young as possible so that I could work with her from an early age and build a relationship with her and start her training off on the right foot. On the other side, I also needed for Raptor to be a male due to the fact that male Argus monitors grow significantly larger than females, like roughly a third, sometimes even double the size of a female. So that was a problem if I ended up with a female, because a male Argus monitor already, like an average male, obviously there are huge Argus monitors out there, but if you're talking the average size male Argus is right on the edge as far as being the appropriate size for handling multiple large adult rats. If he ended up being a big male Argus monitor, he'd be great at it. If he ended up being an average one, he'd be pretty good at it. If he ended up being even just a smaller male, it was going to start to get a little bit questionable as far as handling multiple large adult rats. A female, on the other hand, she would need to be an exceptionally large female to be very good at handling rats at all. And so the goal was definitely, I want a male Argus monitor. So I heard some conflicting information as far as the ability to determine gender in a Argus monitor at a young age. Some guys claimed it was just a guess. Other guys, the guys who bred Raptor for me, they claimed they could make a reasonably accurate determination at a pretty young age based off of a few different things. So they felt pretty confident, hey, I could pick out a male hatchling for you. It's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's going to be like 90%. Like, he'll feel very confident that it is indeed a male Argus monitor. Well, unfortunately, I decided to take that risk and have the advantage of starting with a young Argus and be able to start from the get-go, which unfortunately led to Raptor being a female. So like I said, the downside is not that a female Argus monitor couldn't take an adult rat. It's just, here's the thing. In a ratting situation, you're wanting her to catch more than one rat. So just like you saw in that mouse situation where she caught mouse after mouse after mouse, and she quickly and easily dispatched them without any risk to injury or anything like that, that's what we need for a ratting monitor, right? Needs to be able to catch rat after rat after rat, big ones, small ones, medium ones, whatever comes out of the hole, kill them quick, move on to the next. Now, that's a very unrealistic goal for a female Argus monitor. So I was stuck trying to decide, okay, what am I going to do? Now that it's looking pretty confident that she's a female, what am I going to do? So I was thinking about that last spring, about the time that we decided that, yeah, she is indeed a female. What are we going to do? So I just figured, well, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll get lucky. She'll grow up to be an exceptionally large female. We'll just see how it goes. So all last summer, as you guys noticed and made comment on all the time, you kept saying, hey, why aren't we seeing Argus monitor videos? We want to see Raptor. We want to see her catching stuff. Well, the truth of the matter is I couldn't find the appropriate situations to use Raptor. Being so small, we don't hunt very many mice. It's mostly rats. There were just so few circumstances where we could possibly get her out to hunt that we literally made 0 videos last summer when it comes to actually hunting with Raptor. I was pretty torn. At the end of the summer, I went an entire summer unable to find one single mouse that we could go out and hunt. I wanted to show interesting footage, but I didn't have much I could work with. There's only so many videos of me calling Raptor across the yard that I could make and still be interesting. And man, I was really quite frustrated. So at the end of the summer, so as you guys know, during the summer we put Raptor out in our pool enclosure. So she gets to spend from the morning till evening outside in the sun, running around, having a great time. So pretty much from like mid-spring through roughly mid to early fall, she gets the outside enclosure. Now I bring her in at the end of the day, but during her waking hours, 90% of it is outside, and most of her time spent inside is just sleeping. So at the end of the summer, as you would imagine, being a young monitor, she was quite a bit bigger than she was at the beginning of the summer. When the weather got cool enough that I needed to keep Raptor inside, we started to see some problems. When I built Raptor's enclosure, I put a lot of research into building it. I didn't just like off the cuff come up with some crazy idea and slap it together. I actually got onto reptile forums and groups and asked questions and sought advice. But one vital little piece of information that I failed to obtain from anybody until after the enclosure was built was the importance of width. So, with lizards, unlike mink and other mammals that I'm accustomed to, their tails are more rigid and stiff. So when they turn around, their tail whacks the wall if they don't have enough space. So it's much like birds. I'm familiar to that concept with birds and their feathers. If you have a cage where the bird is constantly turning and rubbing its tail on the side of the cage, that's a problem. It'll wear out their tail. Well, in the case of monitor lizards, it wears out the tip of their tail, and they start to get a sore that forms on the end of their tail from them turning around and whacking their tail every time. Now, if you have a really lazy monitor lizard or other reptile, it's not that big of a deal, but Argus monitors are super active, so they're going back and forth and back and forth. When Raptor was smaller and shorter, it wasn't a big deal at all. It wasn't a problem. But after the summer, when I moved her into her closure this fall where she had to spend all day in it, she quickly began to injure herself. So first was the end of her tail. That started to get sore from turning around. All of this was due to her larger size because, you know, she'd lived in there multiple winters before this, never had a problem, but back then she was smaller. Now, after a full summer of growth outside, she started to injure herself when brought back inside. And so I was quite concerned. I didn't at the time have the time to sit down and build a great big custom enclosure for her. And so I was stuck. I was like, well, crap, I need to hurry fix this before she injures herself more seriously. So I reached out to a good friend of mine, Clint, at Clint Reptiles. If you guys have seen his channel, I'll put a link in the description below. I reached out to Clint and said, hey, Clint, this is a problem. I need to move her. I need to move her quick. Do you have any big enclosures that you can move her into where we could avoid some of these problems I'm having with her enclosure until I can figure things out? And he said, yeah, I actually do. Come bring her by, you can put her in there and then kind of figure things out from there. So that's what I did. Took her over to Clint's Reptiles, and after that point, I had some pondering to do. I had to decide what was I going to do. Clint offered, he said, you know, you could have her here temporarily. We would be happy to keep her permanently. It's kind of up to you and what you want to do. So I said, thanks, buddy. Really appreciate it. For now, I'm just going to leave her with you, and then I'll decide what to do. And he said, okay, great. So I left Raptor at Clint's Reptiles and had some soul searching to do. What am I going to do next? Do I need to, take the time to build up a brand new enclosure? It's really disappointing, man. I put a lot of time and money into building the enclosure I had. Now I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But I had to find something out that was good and appropriate for Raptor. So Clint has Raptor at this time, and you guys have noticed, I haven't posted any videos on her or described what happened to her for a while. Reason being was I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I needed some time to think and to ponder and to figure out what were my next steps. But the problem was we already had an issue. The original goal of hunting with Raptor was clearly not going to happen. So number one problem was Raptor was a female. A female Argus monitor probably wasn't going to be big enough to hunt rats. Originally, when I realized that, I thought, well, that's fine. We'll just use her for mice. But we went an entire year without finding a single situation where we could use Raptor for mice. So I was stuck. What am I going to do? I started thinking, well, with Raptor not being the correct gender for the job, maybe I should, one thought I had, maybe I should let Clint keep her like he requested, let him have her, and then maybe consider another monitor lizard. But then I got thinking about that. You know, realistically, even if Raptor, let's say Raptor was a male, and she was big enough to hunt this summer, let's say. She was large enough we could have gone after rats. How many situations did I really come up against where I could have utilized Raptor as a big, large rat-killing monitor? Not very many. So back when I first got the idea of using a monitor lizard for pest control, we had this great ratting place. You guys may remember it. It was the feedlot is what I like to call it. The place where we were lifting up cement slabs and big old heavy bales with tractors and the rats would run out. That place was awesome. We actually ratted at that place for an entire 2.5 years. We removed well over 1,000 rats. I don't know how many it was, but hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rats we removed from that one location over a 2.5 year period. So, after 2.5 years of ratting at a place and never really wiping out the rats, I was convinced that that place would be our go-to ratting spot for the rest of, forever. I assumed we'd always be out there ratting, a couple times a month, every month for the rest of forever. I just figured that we'd never totally wipe the rats out. It would just be a continual crowd control. But, that didn't end up being the case. Eventually, we hit that place over and over again, and eventually we just ran out of rats. So the last time I went ratting there was July of 2020. July of 2020, so what is that? 1.5 years ago. And I just barely talked to the owner of that property, maybe a few days, a couple weeks ago, and he says, it's been 1.5 years, he says he still hasn't seen rats. And the same thing happened with our pheasant farms. The first pheasant farm we went to it'll be 2 years ago in March since we've been there. And they haven't had barely any rats. They actually have seen a few, but we're almost 2 years out since the last time we were there, and they only have a few rats here and there. The pheasant farm that we wiped out last winter, we haven't been there for like 7, maybe 8 months now, and they haven't seen a single rat in that 7 or 8 month time. Now, back to Raptor. Sorry, went off on a tangent there. So Raptor, that feedlot that I thought had this indefinite number of rats that we'd always be going ratting there, we were stuck a lot of times in situations where a monitor lizard, a large monitor lizard, would have been perfect. A lot of times we're out doing pest control in the heat of the summer just due to the fact that farm always had rats and always needed our help and needed us there cleaning them out on a regular basis, not just in the cool months. And the mink couldn't work in that kind of heat. Even the dogs themselves, it was a little difficult for them to work in that heat. We had to keep dipping them in the cattle troughs to cool them off. And I thought, man, a monitor lizard would be perfect for these situations because they like the heat. They need the heat. The heat is required. Obviously, they can overheat as well, so it would be perfect to utilize these monitor lizards who need the heat and work them in these situations on that farm. But lo and behold, I get Raptor, start raising her up specifically for that job, and of course the rats are completely wiped out on that particular farm. Now, the other farms that we've come up against, we probably could have used the monitor lizard for, but they've all been winter jobs where it was too cold to use the lizard. So it's just an unfortunate fact that the original reason and goal for getting the monitor lizard is now currently not really an option. We don't have any places to go ratting where a monitor lizard would be useful like we used to do. So we're kind of stuck. I'm stuck with the idea of, well, I want to pursue this. I want to be able to train a monitor lizard for hunting and for pest control, and that would be so cool. But the situations that we once had that would have worked are no more. I started realizing that unfortunately things have changed, and it wasn't very realistic to really be able to use a monitor lizard for these purposes. So at this point, I've decided, and it's been a really difficult decision for me. As you guys noticed, it's been cold for a while. Why did it take me a couple months to come up with this? Well, it's been a difficult decision. I really enjoyed having Raptor. It was really fun for me. She was a great pet. It was fun training her, things like that. I know you guys really enjoyed her as well. So it was really difficult for me to come to this decision, but I've decided that, It's really going to be best for Raptor if we let Clint have her at his facility, and he'd be able to utilize her in his education programs. The nice thing is I can still go see her. I can go down to Clint's place, not too far from here, and see her in person. And so it's kind of a best of both worlds. She'll be able to get out, do the educational programs, teach people about reptiles, and I'll be able to go see her anytime I want. I can pop in, chat with Clint, play with Raptor, and it's kind of the best of both worlds in my opinion.